On October 23, 2025, June Lockhart, the final surviving adult star of Lost in Space, passed away at the remarkable age of 100. In the final stretch of her life, she began speaking with a level of honesty that had been carefully restrained for decades. In interviews given shortly before her passing, she revealed details that the network had never intended to become public. Today, we step back inside the Jupiter 2 to uncover the truths that remained hidden for nearly 60 years. These were stories the cast carried quietly for a lifetime. Now, at last, they can all be told. The final survivor's shocking revelation. There is something that happens when a person outlives nearly everyone they once worked with. The instinct to protect old narratives begins to fade. When interviews feel like they might be the last, the careful wording disappears, replaced by something far more direct. That shift is exactly what defined the final years of the Lost in Space cast. By 2025, only a few members of the original Robinson family remained. Bill Mumy, who portrayed Will Robinson from childhood into his teenage years, had reached his 70s. Angela Cartwright, who played Penny, was in her early 70s as well. Marta Kristen, who brought Judy Robinson to life, had entered her 80s. And June Lockhart, before her passing in Santa Monica, had begun reflecting on the show with a level of candor that had never surfaced before. One of her most striking revelations was about the show's cancellation. There was no meeting, no formal goodbye, no acknowledgement of the years they had given. Instead, she discovered the end of the series through a small notice in the entertainment section of her morning newspaper. That was how CBS chose to close the chapter on one of the most recognizable science fiction shows of its era. She was not alone in carrying that memory. Bill Mumy later recalled the moment he found out the show was over. At just 14 years old, he had fully believed that a fourth season was already secured. When his agent called with the news instead, he broke down in tears. For a child who had grown up on that set, the sudden ending felt like losing an entire world overnight. By the time these reflections emerged publicly, many of their co-stars were already gone. Mark Goddard had passed away in 2023. Jonathan Harris had died years earlier, in 2002. Bob May, the man inside the robot suit, died in 2009, and Dick Tufeld, the robot's iconic voice, followed in 2012. Yet the surviving Robinson siblings remained connected in a way that surprised even longtime fans. In March 2026, Bill Mumy shared a photo of himself alongside Angela Cartwright and Marta Kristen, captioning it with a simple but powerful message about the Robinson children being spotted on Earth. Decades after the show ended, they were still showing up for one another. That enduring bond revealed something deeper about the series, something far more meaningful than its props or special effects. But beneath that loyalty was a secret few people understood: the show's internal dynamics had been reshaped entirely by one man. Jonathan Harris rewrote his own character. Before he became Dr. Smith, Jonathan Harris had built his career from nothing. Born to immigrant parents and raised in modest conditions, he reinvented himself completely. He changed his name as a teenager, earned a degree he never used, and constructed a career through sheer determination and bold improvisation. When he was offered the role of Dr. Smith, he immediately recognized a problem. The character, as originally written, was meant to be a short-lived villain, someone who would likely disappear within a handful of episodes. Harris understood what that meant: limited screen time, limited impact, and a quick exit. So he made a decision that would change the show forever. He began rewriting his lines. At first, it was subtle. He would arrive on set with altered dialogue, presenting it casually to the cast. But over time, those changes became more significant. He reshaped Dr. Smith into something entirely different, less of a cold antagonist and more of a theatrical, comedic presence. The insults he hurled at the robot, the exaggerated complaints, the dramatic flair, none of it existed in the original scripts. Harris created it all himself, often staying up late to craft new lines. What could have been a forgettable villain became the most memorable character on the show. The audience responded immediately. Fan mail poured in, much of it addressed specifically to Dr. Smith. The network had little choice but to adapt. Harris's role expanded, his influence grew, and eventually he secured his special guest star credit for every episode, something nearly unheard of at the time. But that success came at a cost. Guy Williams and the Quiet Disappearance. Guy Williams entered Lost in Space as a major star. His portrayal of Zorro had already made him widely recognized, and he was cast as John Robinson, the leader of the family and the central figure of the story. At least, that was the plan. As Dr. Smith's popularity grew, the focus of the show began to shift. Slowly but steadily, Williams's role diminished. Scenes that once revolved around him were rewritten or redirected. By the later seasons, he often found himself delivering only a few lines while others carried the narrative. The change was gradual, but impossible to ignore. Colleagues later described the tension on set. Williams, once the clear lead, was now sidelined. Even Jonathan Harris acknowledged the situation, noting how difficult it must have been for an actor to watch his role shrink so dramatically. Williams handled it quietly. He spent time reading, studying astronomy, and playing chess between takes. But the frustration occasionally surfaced. In one heated moment, he reportedly lashed out verbally before catching himself, a rare glimpse into the strain he was under. After the show ended, his career in Hollywood never fully recovered. But in Argentina, where Zorro had become immensely popular, he found a different kind of success. He lived there for years, admired and celebrated in a way he had not experienced in the United States. In 1989, he passed away alone in his apartment, discovered days later. It was a stark and sobering end for someone who had once been positioned as the face of a major television series. Meanwhile, another cast member had endured something even more physically demanding, largely unnoticed. Bob May and the Hidden Cost of the Robot. To viewers, the robot was one of the most beloved elements of Lost in Space. But inside that costume was Bob May, enduring conditions that were far from glamorous. The suit itself was heavy, restrictive, and poorly ventilated. Under studio lights, the temperature inside became extreme. On more than one occasion, May lost consciousness due to lack of oxygen. Yet production continued, with little adjustment to accommodate the risks. Despite being responsible for the robot's movements and personality, May was never credited on screen during the show's original run. This lack of recognition had lasting consequences, including reduced pay and limited residual income. In later years, he and his wife lived modestly. After losing their home in a wildfire, his health declined, and he passed away in 2009. Yet those who met him at conventions described a man of remarkable kindness. He spent hours with fans, ensuring no one was overlooked. In many ways, he became the exact opposite of how the industry had treated him. The pilot that almost changed everything. Before Lost in Space became the show audiences remember, it was something very different. The original pilot, filmed in 1964, was a serious, dramatic story about a family stranded in space. There was no Dr. Smith, no robot, and no comedic tone. It focused on survival, intelligence, and cooperation. CBS approved the project, but with conditions. They wanted more conflict, more spectacle, and elements that could sustain weekly episodes. That led to the introduction of Dr. Smith and the robot, as well as a shift in tone. Most of the original pilot footage was eventually repurposed into early episodes, but the vision had changed. What began as a grounded science fiction story became something more theatrical and unpredictable. Interestingly, recent trends in television, especially the rise of darker, more character-driven sci-fi, have led some critics in 2025 and 2026 to revisit that original concept. With audiences embracing deeper storytelling again, many now believe the initial version of Lost in Space was ahead of its time. Rivalries, relationships, and unexpected truths. The supposed rivalry between Lost in Space and Star Trek has often been exaggerated. While the two shows competed for viewers, their productions occasionally overlapped in unexpected ways. In one instance, makeup resources were shared between the shows due to tight deadlines, leading to amusing fan speculation about similarities in design. Behind the scenes, however, a different story was unfolding. Bill Mumy and Angela Cartwright grew up together on set. Their bond eventually turned romantic, leading to a brief engagement in their early adulthood. Though the relationship ended, their friendship endured for decades. Mumy also revealed something surprising. Despite starring in Lost in Space, he was an avid viewer of Star Trek. Years later, he even appeared in one of its spin-offs, closing the loop in a way few fans could have predicted. The strange ending that wasn't an ending. Lost in Space never received a proper conclusion. The Robinson family remained stranded, their journey unresolved. The final episode offered no closure, leaving fans with questions that would linger for generations. The cancellation itself came down to budget disputes. CBS wanted to reduce costs, producer Owen Allen refused. The result was abrupt and final. One episode from the final season, often cited as a turning point, featured a storyline so unusual that it became infamous. What was intended as creative experimentation instead highlighted how far the show had drifted from its original premise. Yet, in a twist that still surprises many, that same episode later appeared on a list of notable television moments, proving that even the most unconventional choices can leave a lasting impact. What time revealed. In the years that followed, the cast took different paths. Some distanced themselves from the show, while others embraced its legacy. Jonathan Harris continued working well into his later years, maintaining his signature style. Bill Mumy and Angela Cartwright remained active in fan communities, preserving the memory of the series. The Netflix reboot, which ran from 2018 to 2021, paid tribute to the original in subtle ways. Character names, cameos, and references connected the past to the present, introducing the story to a new generation. By the time June Lockhart passed away, she had witnessed the full arc of the show's history, from its creation to its reinvention. Her reflections carried a sense of acceptance rather than bitterness. The most enduring legacy, however, may be the connection between the surviving cast members. Decades later, they continue to share stories, attend events, and celebrate what they created together. The Robinson family never made it home within the story. But in real life, the people who brought them to life never stopped finding their way back to each other. And that might be the most important story of all.